Tatooine is sparsely populated, and if the homing trace is correct, I will find them quickly, Master. Here's your look at the Hot Toys Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace. This is the DX-16 Darth Maul 1/6 scale collectible figure. Hot Toys is excited to present Darth Maul's 6-scale collectible Star Wars figure from Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace as its latest addition to their premium DX series. Expertly crafted based on the appearance of Darth Maul in the film, the 6-scale collectible figure embodies extraordinary workmanship and remarkable high-quality details, including 2 interchangeable head sculpts with incredible likeness, meticulously tailored outfit and robe, Darth Maul's iconic double-bladed lightsaber with LED light-up function, a Sith probe droid, a range of interchangeable hands for various posing options, and a specially designed figure base. The first thing we're going to do before we get to the review, so we're going to figure out how tall Darth Maul stands. Went for a dramatic pause there. While I'm doing also this, if you guys are looking to pick up this piece for yourself, or just in the market of 6-scale figures as a whole, I picked this one up over at alteregocomics.com. And I'll provide the link down below, and I'll provide a coupon code if you guys are looking to save some dinero, a little bit of cash. According to my trusty tape measure, you're looking at the figure of Darth Maul standing 11.9 inches in height, so a little short of 12 inches. And we'll switch that immediately over to centimeters post-haste. And post-haste, the figure stands 30.4, so almost 30.5 centimeters tall. The first thing we'll have a look at for this review is the display stand that comes included with Darth Maul. Get a gander at how big this stand actually is. Now, yes, I will admit this is a stand that probably will not see light of day in my DTOLF, but most definitely if you are somebody that displays your 6-scale figures in larger spaces like shelving or just like on desk areas, this is ideally suitable for that. It does take up a lot of space, granted, yes. We've seen this shape of stand before. I think a couple of the Spider-Man Hot Toy figures have utilized this baseball diamond shape stand. But of course now this is all decked out for Darth Maul. On the front you've got the Star Wars Darth Maul front placard. It's very nicely presented here in several different tones of silver and metallic colors. Now I believe this is actually from the Royal Palace in Naboo, of course, and I was trying to place whether this was actually in the hangar or in the generator complex where eventually the battle would continue. And I feel like it's actually in the generator complex based on the colors that we're currently seeing right here. Now they could have also swapped this out, not specifically this entire base, but if they had given us what we've seen in the past where we kind of get those index card overlays, they could have also had one included with this where they would have been fighting on Tatooine, where of course Darth Maul appears in his robe and fights Qui-Gon Jinn. So again, there could have been a couple of possibilities presented in front of us. Speaking of possibilities presented in front of us, let me present one additional possibility. You can also unscrew the adjustable neck, as this is again a wireframe neck. You can adjust it depending on which way you want to display the figure. And instead of moving it from having in the center section, why don't we actually move it to the back? You can also screw it in along the back as well. Now again, it still for me chalks up to the fact that I just simply don't have the necessary space to display it with such the large stand that it is. But I think if the choice was presented in front of me, and let's just say I had the available space, let's just throw that scenario out there in the clouds, I probably would have it right here. That way you could kind of have him centered in the center of the flooring, and then you could display him maybe with like the double lightsaber, all of which we will have a look at in a second. So pause for a second. I would say for a grade on this, I would give this a passable B+. It's not quite A territory. While it does look good, it's just going to take up too much space, and space is certainly not something that this humbled reviewer has a whole lot of. And regarding that fleeting space, when the time came to pick up a Darth Maul for my collection, I had the available options presented in front of me of the DX16, let's just imagine it's right here, and the DX17, which would be right here. I can tell you though, there's nothing different between the two figures. The figure it's exactly the same. The head portraits are the same. You're not getting any extra bonuses, except for DX17's version is going to come included with the Sith Speeder. And while the Sith Speeder is neat and it does light up, going back to, of course, that previous talking point, I would have not had space to display it. So there was no sense in picking up a figure with an accessory that I would just never display with. Nice looking speeder when it's all said and done. There's no space. No space. By the way, that Sith speeder also, you know those two holes we were talking about with the display stand? There was one in the middle, there was one at the back. Yeah, remember those? You could actually take the neck out, and it comes with a post for the Sith speeder. You can either put it in the center, or you could put it at the back. So there you go. I mean, ultimately, I think I would have probably put it in the middle myself, but I digress. So basically, all the stuff you're seeing here with DX16, I know, yada, 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 would have all been included with the X17 version. There's nothing different other than the Sith speeder. So one of the included accessories with both versions, let's turn it the right way up, is the Sith probe droid. The little tiny droid that follows along Darth Maul when he goes, of course, to Tatooine. It's a nice little representation of the droid itself. A nice little, I don't know if you can see it, there's a slight scratching the way that they've done the paint on it. So it kind of looks like it's more like brushed. As you can see down below there, there's like a little edge of silver that's been added to it. I really like those little small details. It's got a lot of interesting things to it for it really just being a sphere droid. Now, obviously, it would have been a lot more expensive, and I would be curious as to how they would even pull it off. It doesn't levitate on its own. Shucks. However, you do get a little post that's on the underside, a little hole section here, which is attached to this, that comes included with the droid. Before we do that, though, I also want to draw your attention. No, we're not going to perform any magician's tricks, although it does look like a magician's wand. You do get this little antenna that's going to go right to the very top. You'll know which one is right side up, or which way the droid goes. The larger hole is on the bottom, or this antenna is on the top. Easiest way to remember. When you do fit it down, you can put the antenna any which way that you want. But if you look at it, there's actually a little cut-in section right there. And I find it fits best and furthest down when you run it from the front. Now, do it very carefully. Just kind of wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. There we go. You don't have to wiggle, but put the antenna in, kind of wiggle it in there. And then you've got the antenna in place for the probe droid. From there, you're going to go ahead and just attach the post on the underside. And again, I'm all about just turning it, getting that securely in place. And then from there, you can attach it to the stand. Now, the stand reminds me very much of the Eric Draven Hot Toys Crow figure that we had gotten before. Remember that little crow that we got? It came with like a little curved base. That's what this droid reminds me of. Not the droid itself. It doesn't remind me of the crow. That would be silly. But the base itself reminds me very much of the crow. It doesn't seem to stay in place very well. And it's really quite small. I guess for the purpose it serves, it does do the job that it's asked to do. It stays in place. But the base itself is really, really small. Again, at the end of the day, providing you don't bang it or anything like that, the droid's going to stay perfectly in place. Man, you can display it right next to Darth Maul here. Seeing as we already were talking about the droid and Tatooine when we go with the desired look for Darth Maul when he was on the planet, he does come included with this shrouded, hooded cloak, which is a really nice way to display the figure. I'm torn, honestly, when it comes to displaying the figure, whether I'm actually going to go sans le robe or am I actually going to go with the robe. But let me just show you how that attaches onto the figure. All you really need to do, the head itself is attached by magnets, so you don't really have to worry about that. I'm glad that these are actually on magnets. In the past, I've really been reluctant to the idea of accepting figures' heads where they're just on magnets. But I think with my older age and becoming a little bit more experienced when it comes to collecting these, I think it's a lot easier just to change out heads when you have to do this as opposed to popping off a ball joint, especially for these little tiny pricks and horns sticking out from his head. You really don't want to be adding a lot of additional pressure putting that down on a ball joint. We'll talk about that though in a second. But if you take the robe, you're going to take the hooded section, and you want to be careful that it doesn't snag onto these horned pieces. It's going to happen a lot. And again, if you're not going to be displaying the figure with that, you may not even have any bit the issue anyways. But you just fit that hood over top of his head like so. And then he's got these sleeves. So what you want to do is you want to feed the hand. You can actually just take the hand off, which I just inadvertently popped off, and just bend the elbow, just like that. And then you're going to find, it's like dressing a small child, which is something I'm really doing a lot more nowadays than I wasn't doing before. When you feed it through the sleeve, you're going to want to resist the urge to feed it right to the very end. There is no sleeve happening there, Jack. It's sealed completely shut. Instead, there's an opening right here, about midway down the sleeve. You're only going to feed the arms through that. And if it does age you, you can go ahead and take the head sculpt off. I kind of had a feeling that that was going to pop off for me, so I'm just going to get that off completely. We're going to go ahead and remove the other hand. Again, you really don't have to, but I feel like the hand is going to pop off on me. So we're going to bend the elbow up, feed the arm through, like that. And then you're going to just line it up to the hole like so. And just feed it through. Again, don't go right to the very end. Instead, feed it through that opening right there. And then just feed the arm through, just like that. Really, the look that you want to go with is the fact that these little back tassels of fabric are going to sit behind Maul's arms. And then from there, we're just going to feed the elbow through. Pop, of course, the top of the glove back on. And then we'll just go ahead and just replace the hands. Just before we do that, though, we can pop the head back in place. And then you've got the hood hanging over top of it. Now, I never find that these hoods really sit well in place. There is a frame in there, a wool wire frame, that you can manipulate and move the hood if you want to. There's also a section here that you will not want to forget. There's a little fastened section right here. There's a little fastener right there, a little looplet, and there's the hook on the other side. Just going to feed that one over the other, attach that in place, and then you've got the cloak very nicely presented here on Darth Maul. Short of, again, the only thing that you really would need to do is replace the hands. But it's definitely a nice looking look for the figure. And again, you can sort of see why I'm torn as to which way I want to display the figure. I like the look of him shrouded as a mystery, sort of in that cloak look. But there's obviously something really cool about displaying him with a double-bladed lightsaber at the very end of the fight, of the very end of the movie, when he's fighting both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn. Because I'm not completely a heartless monster either. Not completely, at least. I did put the hands back into the forearms where they belong for Darth Maul. I sort of felt awkward the fact that he didn't have the necessary digits to hold the accessories that we will be having a look at in a second. But it is one thing, putting the hands back in place, that reminded me of a talking point that I want to mention that bothers me about this figure. Do your best if you can to remind me. Everybody's like, we don't even know what it's about. But just quickly looking at the figure yet again with the robe, I like the pleated look, the way that they've done the robe here. None of this is actually wire framed. I mean, when you look at it, you almost feel like you'd be able to manipulate it. The wire frame is actually only around this area of the hood, and it only runs down both sides of the front of the opening here. So you can manipulate these. You can move these around if you want. So I like that, but you don't have it anywhere else. So you're really only going to be able to go a little crazier doing the front here, while the rest of it is just going to drape and just naturally fall, which again is perfectly fine for me. The one talking point I did want to mention, I don't know why I felt the need to bring in the probe droid for this, is his hands. The hands really bother me a lot. I'm going to take the fist off because I want to show you what they've done. Take the bottom of the glove off as well. And lo and behold, what I was going to talk about stayed with inside the glove. It's these little caps, these little faux leather material caps that they put over top of the forearm. It's fine and good that they did that, and I guess two reasonings why they did that was so the bottom of the glove sits a little bit more securely. It's something that it brushes against and holds it in place. And I guess in a way it also finishes off the glove, so if you put the hand back in place, there's something in between where you're not just looking at a peg. The problem that goes along with that, you can probably guess where this is going. If you look at it, it covers so much of the peg and leaves very little of a stump left to fit this over his hand. I think when it comes time to displaying this, I'm probably just going to leave this off completely, put the bottom of the glove on, and then revisit the hand. I don't think I'm losing and sacrificing anything by not having these in place. But honestly, Gloved hands are already a difficult thing to put in place because you get very little. I mean, look how much space you had from here to the end. You've got this very small peg to work from. If I'm now also adding this additional piece right here, well, it's limited in what more I can add for attaching the hand. So for me, I'm just going to leave this completely off and then put the hand back in place, because it's caused me a lot of times where the hands wants to pop off. In fact, it's popped off a lot of times just because they felt the need to add this extra little piece here, which I don't feel personally is necessary. Now we're going to go ahead and put the accessories, which we normally would look at in this part of the review, to the back burner for the time being. Don't worry, we're going to still have a look at those, but I did want to look and address the head sculpts first. I know I did pluralize that because Darth Maul actually comes with 2 of these. He does come with 2 head portraits, which are by far fantastic likenesses to how he appears in Episode 1. If you ask me, Darth Maul certainly was one of the best aspects of Episode 1. It certainly wasn't Jar Jar Binks. I kind of like the battle droids, and I like the pod racing, but Darth Maul, especially battling both Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi at the very end of the film, was fantastic. And even like the look of Darth Maul is not something that you would see earlier in the Star Wars universe. He just didn't have a character that looked like this. Darth Maul very much was different from some of the stuff that we'd saw in the past. Whatever head sculpt you decide to go with, whether you go with the angrier expression or the more neutral expression, both head sculpts are fantastic in design, paint, and execution. Speaking of executing, you might find yourself executing your fingers as you are pulling the head sculpts off. Thank goodness, again, these are magnetized, so taking the heads and popping them off couldn't be any bit easier. If these were ball joints, then you would have the risk of putting your hand onto the head and popping this off. And while they won't draw blood, the little horns that are sticking out from the tops and his sides of his face are definitely sharp. I don't personally remember Darth Maul, I would have to go back and watch the film again, being this angrier in expression. I know some people like this look for Darth Maul. I honestly think the more somber look is my preferred choice for the Sith Apprentice. But the fact that you do get both of these, and that you don't have to get the DX-17 to get both of these, is a nice touch by Hot Toys. Also, speaking of which, let me just pop this head off because I like this one instead. I didn't realize Darth Maul had an earring. Did you know he had an earring sticking at the top of his earlobe? I didn't know that. I guess this is the earlobe here, the top of his ear. Had a little earring. I didn't even know it was there. Just, again, fantastic paint, fantastic sculpt, and fantastic execution on both of these heads. Now, you can also do one better, because, of course, these are the DX series. We're just going to go ahead and put his headless body. It should more so be a legless body, but digress. If you look on the underside of the figure, or interior of the head, he does also have the little purrs. You may not want to go to that extreme, but he does have the little joysticks that you can move back and forth. So if you want to customize, you can go with the more zombie Darth Maul if you wanted to. We'll just bring the eye down to a more natural place. You can bring those eyes side to side. I personally kind of always just like having my DX figures with the eyes looking forward. Generally, it's very few and far between that ever have the eyes looking sideways, but I guess, again, if you wanted to do, you could bring those eyes sideways. Make them, of course, look like eyes would realistically move in pair. You can have Darth Maul kind of looking to the side if you want, or, again, if you want to, you can just bring those joysticks around. Now, again, there is a tool that comes included with it. I'll look at that in the accessories. Actually, we'll just grab it over here on the side so you guys can see what it looks like. It's this little tool here. You'll see there's a peg on the end, and inside the individual per joysticks have these little opened holes. Well, you just put the peg in there, and then you can just navigate the eyeball around until you get, again, the desired look. This look is okay. This look needs a lot of work, so we'll just go in there and fix that up. Just bring that around. Again, it's fine that they include a joystick, the little extra accessory right here. I'm fine again, and I still think you can easily quite do it just with using your fingers. But in case you are wondering, both head sculpts, the angrier expression or the neutral expression, both have the purrs. The positioning, I forget what purrs actually stands for, but you can actually go in there and just move those joysticks around to control each of the eyes. And I guess on his 2 pairs of eyes, 4 eyes total. So beelining it back to Darth Maul's accessories, the first thing we'll have a look at is his lightsaber. This is the defaulted lightsaber that comes included with the figure. Of course, it's a double-bladed version of the saber, so he, of course, comes included with the beams, the blades, if you will. Those just fit in, just like that. You want to be careful, because, of course, these are long, thin, slender pieces of plastic. You just want to navigate them on both sides, and he has the double-bladed lightsaber. Now, obviously, you can look at this and think one big problem it's going to face is that I think that's actually going to touch wall-to-wall of a detolf shelf. So you may want to probably display it slightly more on an angle. This is the double-bladed lightsaber that he uses at the end of the film, battling both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. The lightsaber is also detachable, so you can also do that way as well. What I'll do is I'll separate it for the time being, as he does have a single version of the lightsaber, single blade version of the lightsaber, and he also has a connector end cap piece. So once you do remove the two parts, the two components like so, he does come with this extra piece that just fits. It's a half moon shape and just fits over top like that. So then he can have a single blade version, or the single handled version of his dual bladed lightsaber. I'm going to go ahead and pop this back off. One of these smaller pieces, of course, that you have to be careful of that you don't inadvertently lose. And we'll just attach this back in place. We'll go ahead and remove the blades and just pop those off either side. This side's a little tighter, I noticed, than this side here. And we'll just get a quick close-up look at the lightsaber. I always kind of found that Darth Maul's lightsaber seemed very uninteresting, as it was just a series of buttons and knobs, just a whole bunch of stuff happening from one side to the other. It kind of actually always looked more like a musical instrument than anything else. It's done all in silver plastic, with, again, as I mentioned, that little disconnection piece where you can remove the two halves to make a complete whole. Now, this version would be for his regular hand holding. There is also, of course, like other Jedi and Sith Lords out there, there's also a version of the lightsaber that comes already attached to his hand. He comes with two versions of that, which is basically the short version that we just looked at, and the full extended version of the lightsaber that come already pre-assembled and pre-attached to these hands. You can't remove these hands, so don't be trying to take those off, and they both have batteries. The batteries themselves are I believe they're LR44 batteries that you can easily find, but thank goodness the folks over at Hot Toys include those when you pick up Darth Maul for yourself, and I've already taken the liberty of installing both the batteries in his forearms. These are, again, something that they really need to work on when it comes to changing the arms out. I'll show you how that works in a second, but you'll also see, too, that it only works on this side of Maul. This other side doesn't have this, so if you want to display him with it, you probably will just want to go the route of displaying him with the regular lightsaber instead, and the regular hands. But just to show you how it lights up, why don't we take the first one, the smaller handled version of the lightsaber, and we'll just attach the blade in place again, and we'll go ahead and just switch the lights on. Now, it's not a very bright light, not bright at all. It's only being omitted at the bottom of the base, and as you could probably guess it, the further it travels along that blade of plastic, the dimmer and dimmer the light actually goes. This can be switched out, so if you want to go with the double-bladed version, you're going to do the exact same thing, except you're going to double up what you're doing. Obviously, you're going to put the blade in the first on the top, and you're going to repeat the exact same step on the bottom. Just feed that in place like so. Again, you've got a very long reach from blade to blade. And to turn that on, now you've got lights happening on both sides, and LED lights on both sides. Again, it's not super bright. The time that I've been kind of playing around with the figure, I've already noticed that the light on this one is starting to dim. I don't feel like you get the strongest of batteries at times when it comes to these figures. Sometimes I feel like you're only getting like trial batteries. But this is not something, obviously, that you're going to want to display him going, with these light up all the time. That is going to drain the batteries lickety split. But go ahead and show you how you attach this to his arm. So first we're going to do is unplug this, turn this off, take off the blades again, like that, a little bit stubborn on the one side, and take that off on the other side. Just wiggle that off like so. There we go. What we're then going to have to do is we're going to have to remove the hand, we're going to remove the top of the glove, and then we'll roll up the sleeve. Yeah, don't worry, I'll show you guys how that's done. First thing we're going to do is take the glove, pop the glove off, the glove hand. I've already gone ahead and taken off that bit of nuisance material that they've added to the end of it. And then do as best you can to kind of roll these up. These are never fun, and I don't ever enjoy changing the arms out on anything that has a light up hand option, because you have to kind of navigate as far up, and the material never goes up as far as you want. I suppose they could go the route of having this an open flap with a little bit of Velcro, but you would see it certainly on the back. So what you do is just get it as far up as you can. I might even just take the head off as well. Grab onto the bicep. This is sort of the part that I don't like doing. And again, you're just sort of wiggling this off. Essentially what it's doing is there's a clamp. Well, there's a clamp that this fits in between of. And because you can't see it, you're just sort of navigating it until you eventually free it, popping it off. I don't like the sight unseen action of simply just pulling off until eventually it frees itself, because I feel like one of these days it's going to just break right off. Then you have to kind of figure out where that peg is, so it's facing this way. So again, you're just going to line that up, snap it in place, and then once it's in place, then you'll have the light up option going for the lightsaber. And then you'll just have to repeat the steps by bringing the sleeve fabric back over the forearm until eventually it meets back to the hand. Now again, from here, you're going to be adding the glove part of the hand. And we're going to also do something a little bit differently too. Once this is in place, and you can see it does light up, just turn this off for the time being, as he does come with a different version of the glove. Now, you will still be not using this hand, but you are still going to be using the top part of the glove, of course, right? Because that's the section that's going to be removable. Well, to do that, you're not going to be actually using this glove. This is the one that I just took off. Instead, you're going to be using this one right here. No, I'm not trying to fool you. They do look the same, don't they? Until you tip them up, and you'll notice that there's a seam line running up the middle here. Because you can't remove the hand, because it's attached electronically to the rest of his forearm, you're going to take these, and this one separates. You only get one of these, and you're basically just taking it and you're clamping it over top of the forearm. One problem, actually two problems that faces. One, it pinches the fabric that's in between, so you may have to just tuck that underneath when you're ready to close it. I guess two is it doesn't close completely. I'm always sort of fighting with it. And the biggest one is it accomplishes the idea that it does finish off the glove. If anything, if you want to try to hide the seam, you can twist it around to the back. But the biggest problem, you can probably already guess what it is. How do you turn it on? It basically involves you peeling this off, turning the light switch on, then putting this back on. I wish there was a simpler way to do this. And I can't think of any other way I would have gone about it. They can't put a light switch here because it wouldn't be large enough to house all the electronics inside. They have to put it on the forearm. But the biggest problem, again, is you have to take this piece off, turn on the light switch, and then put this back over top. And that's a lot of, I feel, unnecessary steps just to get the light up effect. Speaking of lighting up the lightsaber, we already had a look at the blade of the lightsaber, but Hot Toys also gives you a variation to that as well. We saw this in the past also with the Hot Toys Luke Skywalker that had the same effect. It basically gives you the swooshing effect, just done in a broader piece of translucent pink plastic. You do get two of these, and you can put them on either side, simply just attaching it the exact same way as we did before. Just wiggle this in place like so, and then we go ahead and wiggle the bottom one on. I say wiggle a lot, don't I? Just wiggle those in place like so, and you've got sort of the swooshing look of the lightsaber, which again is fine, but it is going to take up a lot of space. Yeah, I know I sound like a broken record for saying it's going to take up a lot of space, but get a gander at this. That's going to take up a whole lot of space. If anything, I'm probably just going to display it, as I said, with a single blade, just the regular blade. But I do like the fact, don't get me wrong, I like the fact that you do get that included when you pick up a figure like this. Now we're going to run through the rest of the figure's accessories. You'll excuse me in advance that I did swap out his light up lightsaber arm in favor of the more safer regular defaulted arm that came out of the box. For me, I'm never going to display the figure with the light up lightsaber. I'm never going to have a friend that comes over and says, hey, does that lightsaber light up? To which I would say, hey, check this out, and proceed to roll up the sleeve and do all that stuff. And I'm also a big believer that leaving batteries in, I know some people say it's safe, but leaving batteries inside of things like Hot Toys, I feel over time is going to cause damage to the piece when those batteries may potentially leak. There may not be a chance that the batteries will leak on these pieces, but I don't want to take those chances. So even after reviewing, whether it be a Hot Toys Iron Man or in the case here of Darth Maul's arms, those batteries come out and they go back in the tray where I feel they belong. So let's have a look at the rest of the accessories. We'll start with this. This is a rather interesting piece that greets you as soon as you open up the first flap of the box. You take the sleeve out, you open up the flap. If you are no strangers to the DX variety, you usually get like a little extra something, a calling card, if you will. Joker was a good example of that because he did come with like a little playing card version of the Joker, whereas Darth Maul here gets like a metal plate. You could say it's a card, though I wouldn't want to be playing too much with it. You can see that it's been not quite embossed, but it definitely has Darth Maul running down the side, and you've got a side profile of Darth Maul. The problem with the card, though, is it's super thin. It's also metal as well. And while I'm not going to run the risk of doing this, I can tell you, though, the edge seems sharp. If you're not careful, and you're careless with this, not that I would think anybody collecting Hot Toys are generally careless to start off with, you would most definitely cut yourself, I feel, running your hand against the very thin edge of this metal card. So just be warned. We're going to put that down. Now, we have also looked at this already, the dual-bladed lightsaber, which of course does detach. One thing I didn't show you, though, was it does have, or the figure does have, these little screw pieces. See this little hole on the edge, the side of the lightsaber? You just plug that in place like that. And you're wondering, are we going to hang this up like a picture? Not quite. Take the figure, and if you look at the side of the belt of his tunic, you'll see that there's a little open slot here. Take the screw. I say it's a screw, it's more just a peg. And that fits inside that little valley, just like that. Just slide that down like so. Now, you don't have to display him fully with the dual version of this. You could detach this and have the smaller version represented on the side of his little belt sash there. But again, it's just, you get this with a lot of the Jedi or Sith figures. There's generally always the available means to display the lightsaber on the side, holstered, his hilt on the side of the figure, if you don't want to display Darth Maul with that. Something I also forgot to mention when we were looking at him with his cloak, Darth Maul also comes with an alternate version of his glove. This is actually what he has while he's wearing the cloak. This just obviously swaps out from the glove on this side and fits just back into place with that. While we're also talking about Tatooine, he does come included with his binoculars. His binoculars are really nice, kind of given that rusted age look to it. And I like also that there's screws actually inside it. Not real working screws, mind you, but enough to make it look like it's a real practical used, small, yes, but a small little accessory that in theory you could really imagine that the figure would actually be able to actually use. Then, of course, the figure has a whole ton of swappable hands, ranging from relaxed hands. He's, got a series of different relaxed hands. He's got hands suited for holding, like, the binoculars, for example. You just clamp those on either side, and he can hold his binoculars like that. He does also have a couple of lightsaber holding hands, and he also does have a couple of force hands. So there's a couple of to go around. And, of course, no Hot Toys would be complete, I suppose, without a couple of swappable pegs. Now these are always handy for me, especially when it comes to reviewing figures, because sometimes if I take a hand out of the socket, whether it be that one or that one, and the peg stays behind, then I can go ahead and just, or sometimes even the opposite, the peg stays in the hand and it's sometimes difficult to get out, I've got an extra pair to go around. That's obviously not their intended purpose. They're not meant for reviewers and making things a little bit easier for them. That's what I'm using them for. But they certainly come in handy if you lose pegs or if you have a couple of these break. You've got a couple on the ready here. Having a look at the figure's articulation, and we'll talk about this again, I really like the fact that these are now attached via magnets. That's not across the board, mind you, but the ones that do have these magnets, I enjoy the fact that it's a lot easier to replace the head, while giving up really nothing in the way of articulation. You can still move the head up, down, right, left. You can rotate it all the way around if you wanted to. Younger me, and when we had a look at the Dark Knight Rises Batman, who had the very same thing happening, I believe I had even said in that video that I prefer the ball joint because it feels like it felt more tactile where I was actually being able to move it and I knew it was attached to something. Young and inexperienced me didn't know any bit better. Older version of me definitely appreciates the fact that I can do this, all the same stuff that I would with a ball joint. But when it comes time to replacing the head, especially for Darth Maul, and you don't want to be touching too much of these, it's a lot easier. And I just don't think younger me realized that at the time. I kind of hope that more 6-scale figures could do this, magnetized heads. It will add, of course, to the cost of producing it and therefore increase the price of the figure. But when you can do that and you can replace these with magnets, gosh darn it, it's a lot easier to be able to move the head up and down. And like I said, you're doing all the same stuff as you did before. You're not losing anything by having these magnetized. Young, inexperienced me. Anyways, his torso does move up and down. He is a little more limited by the fact that the tunic and the under padding here sort of does restrict what you can move back and forth. But you still have an upper torso crunch and you can still rotate that back and forth. His arms do hinge out, not quite at a 90-degree angle, just a little less. Just a little less, just about that. Just a little bit less. A little bit, about a 90-degree angle. Move forward and back on the arms. He does have a swivel in the bicep. I just popped the hand out. That happens too frequently. A double hinge on the elbow. It would be funny, actually, if he lost the hand here in the film. But, of course, right in the middle there. Right in the middle. Legs split out. Again, a little bit more restricted due to the fabric used for the costume. You can move the leg forward and back. He has a swivel at the top. Cut of the thigh. Double hinge on the knee. I don't know if specifically it's just me. Maybe I'm going crazy. But it sounds to me like he's got a ratcheted joint happening in his knee. That doesn't happen too often at all. And then we didn't spend a lot of time addressing his boots. That's what they look like right there, all encased in plastic. Pretty much means that when you rotate the feet back and forth, he has an ankle pivot. But I want to show you, and this is not something that I had a chance to discuss in this review. It's clever and also worrisome the way that they've done the feet. The bottom of the feet are a separate piece than this part right here. And it's only attached by this section of the boot. You see how this is a continuation and it goes to the top here. So they must have glued this somehow. So moving the feet up and down is fine and good. You can still rotate them and give them a slight ankle pivot. But my worried problem now is the fact that because this bottom section here is attached the way that it is, it finishes off the boot. Yes, I'll give that a positive point. But the problem I worry about is how many times you can do that where you're not going to add stress and slowly start peeling this away from the top of his boot. Again, it's clever the way that they've done that, but again, I'm worried that this part right here, if I tilt the boot as far forward as I can, again, I don't know if this is going to start causing stress to the rest of this, or even causing a little split right in the middle, and that would be the worst of the two scenarios. Darth Maul certainly was a menace in Episode 1. Oh, I see what I did there. I see. Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace. Very, very clever reviewer. But he certainly was a menace when you think about it. The fact that this Sith apprentice single-handedly stood his ground and took on a Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his up-and-coming apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he held his own perfectly fine for a long period of time. Got a little arrogant, of course, and was baiting them after a while and probably led to his demise. But the fact that he also did have a dual-bladed lightsaber probably did help in the fact that he was able to stand his ground against two of them. Well, I remember when I first saw that in the theater, the two blades coming out from either side, my jaw must have dropped and hit the floor. I know, really, the toys would have already spoiled the surprise. We all knew up to this point that he did have a dual-bladed lightsaber, but seeing it for the first time in live action, it was pretty incredible, and having Duel of Fates playing in the background, mwah, what a fantastic scene. It's a shame that that was probably one of the highlights of the film. Of course, when you incorporate Jar Jar Binks and Boss Nass and all that ridiculous stuff, Darth Maul definitely was the highlight of the film for me. And Hot Toys here has faithfully recreated Darth Maul in two distinct looks. You can, of course, display Darth Maul in his cloaked, shrouded cloak that he has on Tatooine, or you can also display him like we've got here in Final Looks, uncloaked, unshrouded, and revealing himself to the Jedis in front of him with his dual-bladed lightsaber in hand. The bladed lightsaber will be a bit of an inconvenient nuisance when it comes to displaying him. I'm likely probably going to have to display the lightsaber angled like I got here in Final Looks. Having it straight out sideways, I don't think is going to fit the enclosure of my D12, so I'll probably have to work around that. It's one of the reasonings also why I picked up the DX16 rather than the 17, because then I knew I wasn't going to be displaying him with the Sith speeder. There was no sense in getting an accessory like that if I never had the intended plan of displaying him. Darth Maul has a neat look to him. Of course, he's got the two interchangeable heads. I kind of feel more safer displaying him with the more neutral head sculpt. Some people I've seen, of course, display him with a more angry expression, and that's fine, but I don't really think of Darth Maul like that. I think of him more pompous and real experienced in what he does, how he handles the lightsaber. Having him angry, I think, for me, defeats the purpose. But again, I like the fact that Hot Toys gives you the option. Hot Toys are all really good when it comes to giving you guys options. Like I said, you can display him with the light-up arm. Probably not going to go that route because it's too much of a hassle, and I worry again that the batteries left inside the arm may eventually leak, and I certainly don't want that either as well. A nice looking figure. I'm certainly glad that I did pick this one up, and I'm not sad at all that I passed on the Sith speeder, because this is the look you're currently seeing right now, is probably going to be the look that I'm going to display the figure in my cabinet and with the rest of my Star Wars 6-scale figures. If you manage to pick up this one for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the DX series Darth Maul. It's definitely one of the highlights of my Star Wars 6-scale collection. Also, if you guys are interested in picking this piece up for yourself, or maybe in the market of other 6-scale figures, you can head on over to my preferred place of visits and shop at alteregocomics.com. Not only do they usually have a regular stock of new pieces, so every time they're coming out with something new, I'm always checking out their new released section, but they also are one of the few companies that ship in a double box. In other words, if you are worried like I am that weather conditions, of course, plague shippings from point A to point B, and you certainly don't want a wet box. I've had that happen on a couple of occasions already. Alter Ego Comics puts them in a double box, so they basically put them in a larger mailing box. Their customer service is tip-top, and if you guys are interested in picking this one up for yourself, or again, some of the other 6-scale figures over on their website, you can use the coupon code SPOT15 and save yourself $15 off a minimum purchase of $150 or more. There's one coupon code per household. If you guys are interested, like I said, in picking this one up for yourself, you can click the link down below in the video description and order yours today if he is still available. Today we were having a look at the new Star Wars, slightly new. I know it was a bit behind getting this review underway, but we were having a look nonetheless at the DX series Darth Maul from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Still like that film. It's a film of the prequels. Surprisingly enough, it is the one Star Wars film that I usually go back to before all the others. The Jar Jar stuff is hard to kind of stomach, but the Darth Maul stuff is all win if you ask me. If you guys are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. If you are new to this channel, make sure you hit that bell notification. And if you are new to this channel, make sure you keep your peepers peeled, because there's going to be a whole bunch of 6-scale reviews lined up and coming your way. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.